My husbandof 20 years says he no longer wants intimacy. How do I tell him I can't live without it? My husband and I have been married for 20 years, and while we've had our ups and downs, one issue has grown impossible for me to ignore. I'm 40, he's 45, and he's told me he no longer wants or needs sex. It's not something he came to lightly, and neither did I when I realized how hard this would be for me to accept. For the past few years, our physical intimacy has been minimal. There were moments when I'd please him with my hands or mouth, and he'd occasionally reciprocate, bringing me to orgasm with his fingers. But full sex? That hasn't happened in a very long time. We tried everything to address the issue. He went to the doctor, where they confirmed his testosterone levels were perfectly normal. We attended couples therapy, individual therapy, and even sessions with a sex therapist. Yet nothing changed. Each time, he'd come back to the same point. He's never in the mood for sex and simply doesn't have the energy or desire for it anymore. His work life doesn't appear to be the problem. He works part-time by choice, while I maintain a full-time job. There's no financial strain, no obvious emotional or mental barriers, and no other major issues in our relationship. On the surface, everything else seems fine. Last week, he finally sat me down and asked me to stop bringing up the subject of sex altogether. He said he doesn't want it, doesn't need it, and doesn't want to talk about it anymore. He assured me once again that this isn't about me. It's not a matter of attraction or dissatisfaction. It's just that his interest in sex has disappeared entirely. Hearing those words was like a dagger to my chest. I respect his honesty, but I'm struggling with what this means for me. The truth is, I crave that connection. I need it, not just physically, but emotionally. I've tried to make peace with the idea of living without sex, but I can't. It feels like an essential part of who I am, and suppressing it leaves me restless, unhappy, and incomplete. I don't want to cheat on him, and the thought of losing him breaks my heart. He's my partner, my confidant, and my best friend. But as much as I love him, I can't ignore this part of myself forever. The only option I can see is asking him if I can seek physical intimacy outside of our marriage. I've thought about this for days, but I have no idea how to bring it up. How do I ask him for something that might hurt him deeply? How do I explain that I need this without making him feel rejected or inadequate? I don't want to force him into anything or disrespect the life we've built together. At the same time, I'm scared of what will happen to me, what will happen to us, if this longing remains unfulfilled. Thank you all for your messages and support. It truly means a lot. Here's an update on my situation, though it's not a happy one. It's 6 a.m. here, and I spent the night in a marathon conversation with my husband. 4 hours of trying to discuss this issue, only for him to storm off and stay at his friend's house. That's how well it went. To clarify some things from my earlier post, his testosterone levels were tested, and they're well above average for his age. The doctors assured us there's no medical explanation for his lack of libido. Every night, he sleeps naked beside me, and I know he's physically capable of arousal. I can feel it. Some of you asked if he might be depressed. It's hard to say for certain, but I don't think so. A while back, he said his previous job was stressing him out, so we agreed he would shift to part-time work. Financially, we're fine, and to those questioning whether I'm only with him for money, let me be clear, I earn £70,000 a year, while he brings in £10,000 to £15,000. So no, this isn't about finances. Others wondered if my appearance changed. My weight has fluctuated no more than 5 pounds since we met. I'm 5 feet 7 inches and weigh 9 stone 6, 132 pounds for my American friends. My body's natural changes over the years, like my breasts sagging a bit, are just that, natural. Some of you asked about the frequency of our intimacy. Early in our relationship, we had sex often, but within 5 years, it dwindled to once a month. 4 years ago was the last time we had full intercourse. He last fingered me 2 years ago, and I gave him oral 3 months back. Many suggested he might be cheating, gay, or addicted to porn. I've checked his phone and found nothing to suggest infidelity or secrecy. He's open with his devices, and I've even told him over the years that if he wanted to explore his sexuality, I'd support him. I've offered threesomes and told him I'd be open to anything he might desire. He's never shown interest in any of it. Last night, I finally sat him down. I told him, I understand you don't want to talk about this, and I respect that you no longer want sex. But I still do, and it's a need I can't ignore. So, either we open up our marriage so I can get that intimacy elsewhere, or we need to part ways. That conversation didn't go well. He ranted for hours, calling me a sex addict, a slag, and accusing me of not loving or respecting him. I stayed calm and asked, why don't you want to have sex with me? Are you asexual? Gay? Depressed? Do you not find me attractive? He denied all of it and finally admitted he just doesn't enjoy sex. He finds it boring and has no interest in pleasing anyone else. He said he'd rather masturbate if he had to. I asked why we had so much sex early on, and he bluntly replied, it was just to shut you up. That stung. I reminded him of his past, pointing out he's slept with over 50 people, yet now claims to dislike sex. He explained he did it back then because he was trying to understand what everyone else found so enjoyable, but he never did. I offered a compromise. If that's really how you feel, I won't bother you for sex again. But can I please seek it outside our marriage? You can even choose the person, if that makes you more comfortable. You can control the arrangement however you want, or I can keep it separate, so you'll never know. All I'm asking for is a way to fulfill this need. He exploded, saying, no fucking way, and stormed out. This morning, I received messages from his friends, calling me a slag and a cheater. Clearly, he's told them his version of the story. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer. So I sent him a message. You leaving and getting your friends to insult and harass me says everything I need to know. I'll let you decide if you want to stay in the house or leave. But if you stay, I'll only pay my half of the mortgage until it's sold. After that, you're on your own. Say whatever you want to people. I have all our discussions in text as proof. Goodbye. This is heartbreaking. I've done everything I could for him, yet here I am, disrespected and vilified. His friends ganging up on me was the final straw. I can't continue living like this. It feels like he's one step away from posting cryptic, strong, and silent memes on social media, painting himself as a victim. I don't know what else I could have done. This chapter of my life is closing, and I'll need to find a way to move forward, no matter how much it hurts. Now on to the next story, story 2. I am kicking my daughter out of the house because of her lies after her stepdad accidentally saw her naked. I'm posting this on a throwaway account due to the sensitive nature of the situation. I need advice because my family is bombarding me with calls and texts, accusing me of being a terrible mother for not siding with my daughter. I feel completely torn and overwhelmed. I've been married to my husband for over 5 years. My daughter, who's 19, has a decent relationship with him. It's not exactly a father-daughter dynamic, but more of a mutual respect where she seeks advice, and he's supportive when she needs it. There has never been any indication of anything inappropriate between them. Neither my daughter nor my husband has ever said or done anything to make me suspicious. On Thursday night, my husband and I were watching a movie in the living room. At one point, he paused the film and got up to use the bathroom. Moments later, I heard him knock on the bathroom door twice, 3 knocks each time, with a few seconds in between. I could hear the knocking clearly from the living room, so it wasn't quiet or subtle. The next thing I heard was my daughter screaming. Alarmed, I ran to the bathroom and saw her standing completely naked, trying to cover herself while yelling at my husband to get out. He looked startled and clumsy, stumbling over his feet as he rushed to close the door. After the situation calmed down, I asked my husband what had happened. He explained that he knocked, didn't get a response, and assumed the bathroom was empty. When he walked in, he saw her in front of the mirror, realized his mistake, and tried to leave as quickly as possible. When I asked my daughter for her version of events, she admitted she had been changing in the bathroom, but insisted that he never knocked. I told her I heard him knock clearly, and after some back and forth, she reluctantly admitted that she had her earbuds in, listening to music, and didn't hear anything. Eventually, we all sat down, and my husband apologized profusely for walking in. He explained that it was an honest mistake, and my daughter seemed to accept his apology. She even hugged him and apologized for yelling at him. I thought the issue had been resolved. But things spiraled out of control the next day. My sister called me, furious, accusing my husband of being a creep. Apparently, my daughter had told family members a completely different version of the story. She claimed she had answered him when he knocked, and he still walked in on her intentionally. I was shocked. I confronted my daughter, and she denied telling anyone anything like that. However, when I pressed her further, she admitted to talking about the incident with her cousin, and it must have gotten back to her aunt. I asked her why she lied and made my husband look like a predator. She started crying and apologized, claiming she was just venting and creating hypothetical scenarios while talking to her cousin. The damage, however, was done. By the end of the day, the false version of events had spread through our family like wildfire. My husband, who has done nothing but care for and love both of us, was being labeled a predator. Family members were sending him vile messages, calling him names, and accusing him of things he didn't do. I told my daughter she needed to fix this immediately. I made her read some of the hateful messages being sent to my husband. She refused to take responsibility, saying she never intended for this to blow up and didn't spread the story herself. She argued that everyone knows my husband and the truth would come out eventually. Things came to a head when my husband walked into the living room with his bags packed. He said he couldn't stay in the house while being painted as a creep. He told me he was going to stay with his parents for a while because he couldn't handle the accusations and tension anymore. My daughter broke down in tears, apologizing repeatedly and saying she would make things right, but it was too late. He was already out the door. I told her in no uncertain terms that if my marriage falls apart because of her lies, she will be moving out of my house. I explained that her lies for attention have hurt not just my husband, but our entire family. I told her this was her mess to clean up, and I would not help her. She's 19, an adult, and this is the consequence of her actions. Now, I'm being accused by my family of not protecting my daughter or providing her with a safe space. My sister is especially vocal, claiming I've chosen my husband over my child. Meanwhile, my husband has asked for space, my daughter is inconsolable, and I feel completely lost. I don't know how to move forward. On one hand, I want to salvage my marriage with a man who has done nothing wrong. On the other, I'm devastated by how my daughter's actions and lies have led to this. How do I navigate this situation without losing everything? I'm sorry for taking so long to update, but I've been struggling to gather my thoughts. The past few days have been a blur, and I'm honestly at a loss. I don't know what to do anymore. My husband has asked for a divorce. Before I delve into what happened, let me address a few recurring questions. First, yes, we have locks on every door in the house. I have no idea why my daughter didn't lock the bathroom door that day. Second, the cameras in our house aren't aimed at any specific doors except for the front and back entrances. There's one camera in the hallway, and it shows all the doors in the hallway, but it doesn't capture audio. Lastly, we do have a bathroom in our bedroom, but it's unusable at the moment because the water has been shut off for renovations. Now, to what happened. On Friday, my husband came home and asked to talk. He looked drained, defeated even. During our conversation, he showed me his phone, and the messages my family had been sending him were beyond cruel. They called him a pedophile and accused him of being a predator, even asking how many times he'd peeked at my daughter before. I was horrified. My husband told me he couldn't come back to this. He said the hatred my family had shown, despite knowing him for years, made it clear they never believed in him or cared for him. He felt like this incident had given them an excuse to unleash their animosity. He went on to explain that the fallout had started to affect his work. Some of my family members had called his office, making accusations. Thankfully, his employer didn't take any immediate action and assured him they'd wait until there was an actual case, but the stress was overwhelming. He told me he spent his days at work and at his parents' house in constant fear that the police would show up to arrest him. "I can't live like this," he said, his voice breaking. "Your daughter's lies have broken me, and I don't see a way to fix this." I begged him to reconsider. I suggested counseling, moving away, anything to make things right. But he shook his head, saying it was too late. "Even if we moved, the damage is done. Your family will always see me as the creep, and your daughter. I can't ever be near her again. I tried everything." I told him I would cut ties with my family. I showed him messages I'd sent, blocking anyone who refused to listen to the truth. I promised him I'd have my daughter move out and live with my parents. But he looked at me with so much sadness and said, "And what about your daughter? If we move, will you abandon her? Because I can't have her anywhere near me. If you did that for me, I don't know if I could ever look at you the same way again." At that moment, I didn't know what to say. He continued, "I don't want you to choose between me and your daughter. I can't ask that of you, and I won't. But the only solution here is for us to get divorced." Our conversation was interrupted when my daughter came running into the living room, tears streaming down her face. I think she had been listening to our conversation. Before she could say anything, my husband stood up abruptly, raising his hands to keep her at a distance. "Don't come near me," he said firmly. "If you want to say something, I'm recording this conversation," and he pulled out his phone. My daughter froze, and I saw something in her break, a moment of pure realization. She began sobbing, begging for his forgiveness. She explained that she never meant for things to spiral out of control. She had been venting to her cousin, making up scenarios, and her cousin had run with it. My husband asked her, "If you knew it wasn't true, why didn't you stop it immediately?" Her only response was, "I thought it would blow over. I thought everyone knew you." He showed her the hateful messages and told her to read them. She went completely silent. We talked for hours that night. In the end, my husband said he would give us 3 months to move out of the house since it's legally his. He said my daughter could keep the car he had gifted her, and he would finish paying her tuition for this year, but wouldn't cover anything further. He urged me to get a lawyer, though he said he'd like to settle things amicably. Throughout the conversation, my daughter sat on the floor, pale and broken. As he outlined the terms of our separation, it felt like he was talking about returning a defective item to a store. The past 5 years of love and shared life between us seemed to mean nothing in that moment. When he left, I couldn't process what had just happened. I sat on the couch, staring at nothing, my mind muffled by the weight of it all. I don't even know if I cried or spoke. I only snapped out of it when my daughter began sobbing on the floor, repeating "I'm sorry" over and over again. Later, I saw his car still in the driveway. I looked out the window and saw him sitting there, crying. Seeing that broke me even further. Since then, my daughter and I haven't spoken. Not a single word. She eventually shared the hallway footage with the family, clearing my husband's name, but the damage was already done. Some family members have come to apologize, but I've refused to let them in. They call, text, or send messages on social media, but I block every number and account they use. I don't want to lose my husband. He's the only man who has ever treated me with love and respect, and now it's all slipping away. I've tried reaching out, begging him to reconsider counseling, but all he says is, I can't take the risk." I even went to his parents' house, but they wouldn't let me see him. I went to his workplace, but his boss told me he had been sent home. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't want anything from the divorce. Not the house, not the money, just him. But I can't abandon my daughter either, even though her lies caused all this. Am I truly going to lose the only good man I've ever had in my life?